Most men don't leave a relationship at the right time. They leave too late, after they've already lost confidence, peace of mind, and sometimes even their sense of identity. They stay hoping things will change, hoping she will go back to how she used to be, or hoping love alone will fix what is clearly breaking. But here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't talk about. Not every relationship is meant to last, even if the feelings are strong. Sometimes staying is not loyalty, it's self-neglect. In this video, we're going to break down 6 clear signs that leaving her might actually be better for you, not out of anger, not out of ego, but out of self-respect and emotional clarity. These signs are based on relationship psychology, emotional patterns, and how attraction and connection naturally evolve over time. Because when a relationship starts draining more than it builds, you don't just lose her, you start losing yourself. Sign 1, you feel emotionally unseen, even when you are present. One of the earliest and most painful signs is emotional invisibility. You are physically in the relationship, but emotionally you feel alone. You talk, but she doesn't truly listen. You explain how you feel, but it gets minimized, ignored, or turned into an argument. Over time, you stop sharing not because you have nothing to say, but because you already expect no real understanding. This creates a silent emotional gap. And the dangerous part is many men normalize it. They tell themselves, this is just how relationships are, or maybe I'm expecting too much. But healthy relationships are not built on constant emotional confusion. They are built on emotional safety, where both people feel heard, valued, and understood without having to fight for basic attention. When that safety disappears, the relationship slowly turns into emotional loneliness inside a shared space. You are no longer connecting, you are just coexisting. And here's the key psychological shift. When a man starts feeling emotionally unseen for too long, he doesn't just lose interest in the relationship, he starts losing emotional connection to himself. That is the first major warning sign that staying may be costing you more than leaving ever would. At the beginning of most relationships, respect feels natural. She values your opinion, she listens with interest, and even in disagreements, there's a sense of care in how words are used. But one of the most dangerous shifts in a relationship is when respect slowly starts to fade, because it rarely disappears all at once. It erodes quietly, in small moments that are easy to ignore. And this is where many men make a critical mistake. They confuse emotional history with ongoing respect. Just because she once cared deeply doesn't mean the current dynamic is healthy. Sign 2, you are no longer respected in the way you used to be. Disrespect doesn't always show up as shouting or obvious insults. In fact, the most damaging form is subtle. Tone changes, dismissive responses, sarcastic remarks, eye rolling, constant interruptions, or your opinions being brushed off like they don't matter. You might notice she no longer values your input in decisions, or she challenges you not in a healthy way, but in a way that feels more like undermining than discussion. Over time, you start second-guessing yourself before you even speak. This shift is not just about behavior, it's about attraction psychology. Respect is one of the core pillars of emotional attraction, especially in long-term dynamics. When respect drops, emotional connection follows. And here's what makes it worse. You often adapt to it slowly. At first, you ignore it. Then you try to be more patient. Then you try to earn back the respect by over-explaining, over-giving, or avoiding conflict. But instead of restoring balance, this often weakens your position further. Because respect is not restored by chasing approval. It is restored by setting emotional boundaries and being willing to step back when necessary. A relationship without respect becomes emotionally exhausting. You start feeling like you have to prove your worth instead of simply being valued for who you are. That dynamic creates resentment on both sides. You feel drained, and she may feel more in control, but not more connected. And this is the truth most people avoid. Love cannot survive long term without respect. Feelings may remain, but the foundation weakens. When you reach a point where you feel consistently undervalued, unheard, or subtly disrespected, it's no longer just a rough phase. It may be a sign that the relationship dynamic has shifted beyond repair. Every relationship has disagreements. In fact, healthy couples argue sometimes. It's part of understanding each other better. But there's a major difference between healthy conflict and constant emotional tension. One brings clarity and growth, the other creates distance and exhaustion. Over time, communication should make two people feel closer, not more defensive. But when things go wrong, the same conversations start turning into battles instead of bridges. Sign 3. Every conversation feels like a trigger or an argument. One of the clearest signs a relationship is becoming unhealthy is when normal communication no longer feels safe or easy. Even small topics can turn into misunderstandings, accusations, or emotional reactions that escalate quickly. You might notice that you start choosing your words carefully, not to express yourself, but to avoid conflict. You think twice before speaking. You hold back your real thoughts because you already expect a negative reaction. This creates what psychologists call emotional walking on eggshells. Instead of open communication, the relationship becomes a space where you are constantly managing reactions rather than expressing truth. And on the other side, she may also become more reactive, less patient, or more easily frustrated. The result is the same. Communication loses its softness and becomes defensive. Over time, this pattern builds emotional fatigue. You stop discussing important things. You avoid deeper conversations. Even simple misunderstandings feel heavy because there is already emotional tension built into the relationship. What makes this especially dangerous is that many couples mistake this phase as normal stress or just a rough patch. But if the pattern continues, it slowly replaces emotional intimacy with emotional distance. Because real connection requires psychological safety, the ability to speak openly without fear of escalation, judgment, or emotional punishment. When that safety disappears, communication stops being a tool for connection and starts becoming a source of stress. And here's the deeper truth. When a man feels like he cannot communicate freely, he doesn't just become quiet in the relationship, he becomes emotionally disconnected inside it. That emotional disconnect is often what leads to detachment long before the actual breakup happens. At the start of a relationship, effort usually feels balanced. Both people try. Both people initiate conversations, plan time together, and show interest in each other's lives. But one of the clearest signs a relationship is breaking down is when that balance slowly disappears, and only one person starts holding everything together. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It starts small. You notice you are the one texting first more often. You are the one trying to fix misunderstandings. You are the one planning meetups, checking in emotionally, and trying to keep the connection alive. At first, you justify it. Maybe she's busy, or maybe she's stressed, but over time, the pattern becomes obvious. Sign 4. You are doing most of the emotional and relationship work. When a relationship becomes one-sided, it creates emotional burnout. You are no longer in a partnership. You are in a role where you are managing the relationship alone. You might notice that if you don't initiate contact, days can pass without meaningful conversation. If you don't bring up issues, nothing gets resolved. If you don't make plans, nothing happens. The relationship only moves forward through your effort. This imbalance creates a deep psychological impact. You start feeling unappreciated even if she doesn't openly say anything negative. Because effort is not just about actions, it's about emotional investment. And when one person consistently invests more, they slowly begin to feel resentment. Not because they don't care, but because they feel unseen in their effort. In healthy dynamics, effort is naturally reciprocated. It doesn't have to be perfectly equal every single day, but it should feel balanced over time. Both people should feel like the relationship matters to the other. But when that reciprocity disappears, you begin to question your own value in the connection. You start wondering, am I the only one who cares here? That question alone is emotionally draining. Many men try harder at this stage. They double their effort, thinking it will restore balance. But ironically, this often deepens the imbalance. Because you cannot force mutual investment by over-giving. It only reinforces a pattern where you carry the weight alone. Eventually, this dynamic leads to emotional exhaustion. You feel tired not just of the relationship, but of trying to keep something alive that doesn't feel naturally mutual anymore. And here's the deeper truth. When effort becomes one sided for too long, attraction and emotional connection both start to fade, not because love is gone instantly, but because imbalance slowly kills emotional desire. A healthy relationship doesn't feel perfect all the time, but it does feel stable. Even during disagreements, there is a baseline sense of emotional security. You may argue, you may disagree, but deep down, you still feel calm about where you stand with each other. However, when a relationship starts breaking down emotionally, that stability gets replaced with uncertainty. And uncertainty is one of the strongest sources of emotional anxiety in human psychology. Sign 5. You feel constantly anxious, instead of emotionally secure. One of the clearest signs a relationship is no longer healthy for you is when it becomes a source of stress rather than comfort. You start feeling nervous when she takes too long to reply. You overthink her tone in messages. You replay conversations in your head, wondering if you said something wrong. Instead of feeling relaxed in love, you feel like you are always on alert. This emotional state is not love, it is anxiety based attachment, and it often develops when trust, communication, or consistency has been damaged over time. You may also notice mood dependency. Your emotional state starts depending heavily on how she behaves. If she is warm, you feel good. If she is distant, your entire day feels disturbed. This is a sign that emotional balance has been replaced with emotional instability. And here's the important psychological truth. When a relationship becomes a consistent source of anxiety, your mind begins to associate the person not with peace, but with emotional uncertainty. Over time, that weakens attraction and connection naturally. Many men try to fix this by seeking reassurance or trying harder to keep things good. But reassurance only temporarily reduces anxiety. It doesn't fix the underlying imbalance that is creating it. Because real security in a relationship doesn't come from constantly asking, "Are we okay?" It comes from consistent behavior, emotional clarity, and mutual effort. When those things are missing, anxiety becomes the default emotional state. And this is where you have to be honest with yourself. A relationship that consistently drains your mental peace is no longer just a relationship issue. It becomes a personal well being issue. At that point, staying can start costing you your confidence, your focus, and even your emotional stability. Final thought before the last sign. Not every difficult phase means you should leave, but when emotional patterns become consistent, disrespect, imbalance, conflict, and anxiety, they stop being temporary problems and start becoming the reality of the relationship.